Hey guys, just wanted to make a video going over what we talked about on Tuesday. We began learning about the Russian Revolution before spring break, but hopefully you took your notes on Wednesday, or you will take your notes on Wednesday, and you will have those going forward. We read about it on Monday, we talked about it on Tuesday, and this is what we talked about: the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics. We talked about and read about how the Russian Revolution had been coming about for a long time. About the 1800s, there were different rulers that didn't really do a good job. There were a bunch of revolutions, and there was a lot of loss of respect for the authority there in Russia due to the fact that they had lost wars to nations they probably shouldn't have. And so in doing so, the Russian Revolution comes about, led by Vladimir Lenin and the Bolsheviks, thanks to many different causes: World War One, other revolutions, the creation of the Duma, and basically the royal family and Rasputin being, despised. And so we have Lenin. He's kind of turned everything over. He started all of it. Communism comes about. He destroyed the old way of government in Russia. Wasn't keeping some of the new elements. It was completely working fresh, and it caused the Civil War, which the Reds won. That's why we associate communism with the Reds. And just overall, you have Lenin in charge of the Bolshevik Party, now called the Communist Party, and leading these changes. He brought about new economic policies, instituted a little bit of capitalism, where he gave peasants and factory workers control of those industries, while still, staying in control of them overall. But this made him beloved. And so the country's pretty much going great. Well, we're going to have a transition period. And like I said, they loved Lenin, but Lenin suffers a stroke in 1922. And so while everything was rolling along, Lenin has a stroke and he survives, but it instantly begins a power struggle. Someone was going to have to replace him. And there were really two candidates for the job: Joseph Stalin, a cold, street smart kid that really didn't know how to talk to people, versus Leon Trotsky, who was a military hero from the Civil War, leading the Red Army. And so you had these two guys. Well, Stalin kind of rises up through the Communist Party, starts gaining power, and every step along the way, he adds his friends to the mix. So he gives them jobs. So he's building and building and building, so much so that Lenin, before he dies in 1924, says that Comrade Stalin has amassed so much power, he's not sure that he understands how to properly wield it. But that doesn't really stop anything. Lenin dies in 1924, and Joseph Stalin, who was not always Joseph Stalin, the Man of Steel, as his name uh, is, or is defined as meaning, takes over. Within a couple of years, by 1928, he's completely in control of the Communist Party and Russia, and he exiles Leon Trotsky outside of the Russian government, and basically has no competition. And it's just the streamlined process here where we see them go from Vladimir Lenin to Joseph Stalin. Like I said, Lenin is beloved, and this is him on display in a mausoleum there in Russia. They protect him. You can go visit him today. That's something you can still do, and he's perfectly preserved, which is kind of creepy at the same time. But he was loved because of his role in the revolution. But today's emphasis is on Joseph Stalin, and Stalin created a totalitarianism, or a totalitarian state, a dictatorship that regulates every aspect of a citizen's lives. How do you do this? Well, there's a couple different ways. You practice terror, scaring the citizens into obeying. There was secret police. You couldn't disagree with the government even. And so, the phone lines were tapped, the mail was read through. Even children would snitch on their parents because that's what they had been taught to do in the schools. And we'll talk about that one in a minute. They censored newspapers, and there was propaganda. I mean, like this picture to the right, Stalin looks like a really nice guy there. The kids look like they like him and enjoy being around him, and you can kind of see that they may not really do that, but that's propaganda. There was indoctrination. The education was built on creating good communist citizens, and so that basically replaced all ideology there. So any knock on the government or on the communist way would have been looked as a crime, and you would have been sent to the secret police. They also destroyed religious buildings, synagogues, all those different types of ideas, heavily persecuted those that practiced different religions, and they replaced it with communist ideology, where they taught you how to be a good communist, sacrifice for the government, sacrifice for the country. But this totalitarian state that we're going to look more at, of how they controlled and created this state, kind of takes place under Stalin's rule. Total means all, and so it's all aspects of citizens' lives are controlled by the dictator or the government. A totalitarianism. We'll talk about another one real soon. How do you keep all those people, after they disagree with you, from overthrowing you? Well, you commit something called the Great Purge. From 1934 to 1938, Stalin became really paranoid of any other Soviet leader, because remember, the way that these people have power at this point is because of a revolution. Well, he kind of sees that, and he thinks they might come after him if they disagree with him, so he just gets rid of them. And he has thousands of Bolshevik leaders that had, in 1917, been the reason why they overthrew the government, killed. During this time, they're either sent to the gulags, which I'll show you in just a second, or they're just arrested and killed. 8 to 13 million people overall. The effects of this, Stalin becomes extremely powerful, almost wields power by himself solely. And then, secondly, because most of these leaders were military leaders, it does weaken the USSR, or the Soviet Union. And so this Great Purge is how you make sure that your people don't overthrow you as well. These are the gulags, the forced labor in the gulags, and they're a little different than the Call of Duty gulags that you've seen. But if you know anything about Russia, it is a large country that is very cold, and you kind of see that there. So forced labor in these gulags in Siberia would have been a very difficult time. Many thousands upon millions would have died there. Stalin also controlled the economy through something called Stalin's 5-year plans. There were a series of 5-year plans that helped revitalize the economy there in Russia. The goal: turn USSR, or the Soviet Union, into an industrial power, through which they would increase heavy industry, transportation, and increase farm output. The focus would be on coal, oil, steel, and any kind of mineral production that they could find. Uh, they wanted a second industrial revolution to really take place there, and it did. They set super lofty goals in these 5-year plans and never really met those goals, but the gains that they made were substantial nonetheless. And it really caused a huge production increase and a great increase in their economy. An economy like this is called a command economy, where a government makes all economic decisions. Remember, when Lenin was in charge, he gave control of the factories to the peasants and control of the farms to the peasants. Well, when a command economy comes about, that doesn't really happen. There's less freedom to decide what to do with a resource, because the government tells you what to do with it. The agriculture is controlled by the government. It's government controlled. And they do this through state-controlled farms, where they literally control every action that happens on them, or they have collectives, which are large tracts of farms owned by the peasants as groups. Instead of one family owning it, the whole peasantry may own that collective. And there, this caused uproar, because he had basically taken the farmland from the peasants in this way. Even though the revolution had seen them be given the farmlands, this caused 10 or 5 to 10 million peasants to be killed during the 30s by Stalin's agricultural revolution that he wanted to have there, by them taking the land. Some groups of people completely wiped out in Russia because of this, because they fought back against the government. There was a way for him to grow this. If you know anything about communism, it's the goal is to have a worldwide revolution of the proletariat or the workers. And so they had the Soviet foreign policy called Comintern, where the Stalin and the Soviets funded revolutionary groups to go out into the world. If you want to know why China has a communist regime at a certain point in time in world history, it's because of this. They send out this information and these people to help spur communist revolutions, because that's the goal, is to create a communist world. The effect of this, though, was that they were isolated from the world. Great Britain, France, United States, they completely disregard this information and actually see it as a threat to their way of life. Overall, Stalin's Russia had some effects on society, just overall daily life. One, women become equal. In 1917, that's one of the things the Bolshevik Revolution, the October Revolution, does talk about, is that women and men are equal. And they take on new roles in the fact that they start working jobs equal to men. Now, men still held the higher or better jobs, but women did work many of the same jobs. By 1950, the women make up 75% of the doctors in Russia. Freedoms obviously were lost, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, many others were lost during this time. Education has been revitalized and made super important because of its impact on society that Russia sees, and so they make it a important aspect of society again. And then lastly, because the government controls the economic flow of goods, there's a short supply of consumer goods, because consumer goods are not as important to the government as things they can sell and make money, or things that they can utilize for the greater good of the country. And so there was a short supply of consumer goods because manufacturers, uh, companies couldn't make what they wanted to. They were being told what to make by the government. I hope this helps. I hope you understand a little bit more about Stalin's Russia and the effect of the Russian Revolution that, kind of changed Russia into a totalitarian state. We're going to look more at the totalitarian control and the control methods that Stalin used to create this Russia, this totalitarian state, in our assignments on Thursday and Friday. So make sure you get these down. If you have any questions, send me an email with anything that you need to talk about. And remember that your test is going to be in a couple Fridays. Thanks for watching and have a great day.